Hey there. Before we begin, I need you to understand something. This isn't just a story. This is a warning wrapped in words. Someone out there is watching. Someone out there knows. And tonight, when your phone vibrates in the dark, you'll remember this moment. If this story gets under your skin, hit that like button. Subscribe, because what comes next in this channel will make this seem tame. Now, turn off your lights, put on your headphones, and let's begin. Chapter I, The One Awake. She didn't know she wouldn't sleep that night. But I knew. As she lay there staring into the darkness above, I knew her phone would vibrate in exactly 47 seconds. She was alone in her room. The door was closed. The window was locked. And yet, she was not alone. The phone vibrated. An unknown number appeared on the screen. The message was short and precise. You're awake. She thought it was a coincidence. She thought many things that night. None of them were correct. The room was cold, but not from the temperature. The air had that quality of being watched, that electricity of unseen eyes. She pulled the blanket closer, her fingers gripping the fabric as if it could protect her from what was coming. It couldn't. Nothing could. She looked at the message again, her thumb hovering over the delete button. She didn't press it. Curiosity, that ancient human curse, kept her finger suspended in the air. Who sends a message at 3 in the morning who knows she's awake? She hadn't posted anything on social media. Hadn't texted anyone. Hadn't made a sound. The logical part of her brain, the part that still functioned despite the creeping dread, suggested it was a wrong number. A spam message. A coincidence. But coincidences don't know you're awake. Coincidences don't time themselves to the exact moment you open your eyes in the dark. She set the phone face down on her chest, feeling her heartbeat against its weight. She closed her eyes, determined to ignore it, to sink back into sleep. But sleep was no longer an option. Sleep had left the room the moment that message arrived. Her mind raced through possibilities. An ex-boyfriend? No. They'd all moved on, and don't had this number. A friend playing a prank? Possible, but unlikely at this hour. A stalker? The word sent ice through her veins, but even that didn't fit. A stalker would say something threatening, something revealing. Not just knowing. That's what this was. Pure, simple knowing. The phone vibrated again. She didn't want to look. Every instinct screamed at her to throw the device across the room, to bury herself under the covers like a child hiding from monsters. But we both knew she would look. Humans always look. It's coded into their DNA, that need to know, even when knowing might destroy them. She lifted the phone, her hand trembling slightly. The screen's blue light cast shadows across her face, turning her features into a mask of fear and curiosity. The new message waited. You're thinking about throwing the phone. Her breath caught. She had been thinking exactly that, just seconds before. Her eyes darted to the window, then to the door, then to every dark corner of her room. Nothing. No one. Just her and the dark and the phone that knew too much. She sat up now, fully alert, her back against the headboard. The rational explanations were crumbling. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a coincidence. This was something else, something that shouldn't be possible. She typed quickly, her thumbs shaking. How are you doing this? The response was immediate. I'm not doing anything. I'm just telling you what I already know. A chill ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. There was a difference in that statement, a subtle shift that changed everything. This wasn't someone watching and reporting. This was someone who already knew. Past tense. As if it had already happened. She read the message again, parsing each word. What I already know. Not what I'm seeing or what I'm watching, but what I already know. As if her actions were history to whoever this was. As if she was living in their past. The implications of that made her dizzy. She looked around her room again, really looked this time. Everything was exactly as it should be. Her laptop on the desk, closed. Her clothes on the chair where she'd dropped them. Her books on the shelf, spines aligned like soldiers. No cameras visible. No signs of intrusion. Just her normal room, made abnormal by the presence of impossible knowledge. She got out of bed, her bare feet silent on the carpet. She moved to the window first, checking the lock. Secure. She pulled the curtain aside, looking down at the street below. Empty. The street lights cast pools of orange light on the pavement, revealing nothing but shadows and silence. Her apartment was on the 4th floor, too high for anyone to see in without equipment. She checked the door next. Locked from the inside, chain in place. She pressed her ear against it, listening. Nothing. No footsteps in the hallway. No breathing. No sound at all except the building's usual nighttime creaks and the distant hum of traffic. Back to the phone. It sat on her bed, screen dark now, looking innocent. Just a piece of plastic and metal and silicon. Harmless. Except it wasn't. It was a window into something that shouldn't exist. A crack in reality through which something was watching, or knowing, or whatever verb applied to this situation. She picked it up, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. No new messages. She checked the number, memorizing it. Maybe in the morning, she could trace it, report it to the police. Do something normal and rational and sensible. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, she had to get through the dark hours with whatever this was. She typed, "What do you want?" The response took longer this time. 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Each second stretched into eternity as she waited, her eyes fixed on the screen. When it came, the message was shorter than the others. Nothing. I'm just here. Just here. 2 words that should have been meaningless but instead carried the weight of a threat. Because being here meant knowing. Knowing meant watching. And watching meant she had never been alone. Not really. Not in any way that mattered. She wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. She wanted to call someone, anyone, to break this isolation with a human voice. But who would believe her? What would she even say? That someone was texting her, that they seemed to know what she was thinking? It sounded insane even in her own head. She looked at the time, 3:27 a.m. Hours until dawn. Hours until the sun would rise and make this seem less real, less immediate. Darkness was this thing's element. She knew that instinctively. Whatever this was, it thrived in the space between midnight and morning. She made a decision. She would stay awake. Watch the phone. Document everything. If this continued, she'd have evidence. Proof. Something to show the police or a therapist or whoever deals with impossible situations. She grabbed a notebook from her desk, dated the top of a blank page, and began to write. 3:22 a.m. Second message received. Claims to just be here. Number is. She paused, looking at the number. But there was no number. The message thread showed unknown at the top, but when she checked the details, there was nothing. No digits. No area code. Just a blank space where information should be. That wasn't possible. Every text had to come from somewhere, had to have a number attached. Even blocked numbers showed as blocked. This was just empty. Void. As if the messages were materializing from nothing. The phone vibrated in her hand, making her jump. She nearly dropped it, her fingers scrambling for purchase. The message, "You won't find a number. This isn't that kind of conversation." Her hands shook as she read it. It knew what she was doing. It knew she was looking for the number. It knew in real time, or before time, or whatever time it existed in. She typed furiously. "What are you?" The caps lock was intentional, a shout into the digital void. Let it know she was afraid. Let it know she was angry. Let it know something. The response was calm, measured. "I'm what comes after the question you're afraid to ask." She stared at that message for a long time, trying to decode it. What question was she afraid to ask? There were so many. Are you real? Are you in my room? Are you going to hurt me? Will I survive this night? But none of those felt right. Those were surface questions, fear questions. The real question, the one she was avoiding, was deeper. She knew what it was. She'd known since the second message. But acknowledging it would make it real, would give shape to the formless dread in her stomach. Her thumbs moved before she could stop them. "How do you know what I'm going to do before I do it?" The answer was immediate. "Because I'm not in your now. I'm in your tomorrow." The room seemed to tilt. She sat down hard on the bed, the notebook falling from her lap. Time. This was about time. Not surveillance, not hacking, not some elaborate prank with hidden cameras. This was something that existed outside the normal flow of moments, something that saw the future as casually as she saw the present. That should have been impossible. That was impossible. And yet, the evidence was there. Message after message of knowledge that couldn't exist unless it was true. She thought about time travel stories, science fiction explanations. Maybe this was someone from the future, warning her. Or maybe it was something worse, something that lived in the gaps between seconds, feeding on the terror of those who glimpsed it. The phone was silent now. She waited, but no new message came. The silence was somehow worse than the knowing messages. At least those were communication, interaction. This was just waiting, alone in the dark with the knowledge that something was out there, existing in tomorrow, watching her today. She tried to think scientifically. If something could see the future, what did that mean? Did she have free will? Were her choices already made? If she decided to do something completely random, would it still know? She stood up suddenly, moved to her bookshelf, and without looking, pulled out a random book. She opened to a random page and read the first full sentence she saw. The garden was empty except for a single crow. Meaningless. Random. There was no way anyone could predict that. She texted, "I just read a sentence. Tell me what it said." She waited, triumphant. This would prove it was fake, that someone was just messing with her mind. There was no way. The phone vibrated. "The crow in the garden. You thought you were being clever." Her knees went weak. She looked at the book still in her hands, at the sentence on the page. Word for word, it had known. Not just that she would pull out a book, not just that she would read something, but the exact sentence in the exact book on the exact page. That wasn't prediction. That wasn't even advanced probability. That was knowledge, pure and absolute. She dropped the book. It landed on the floor with a thud that seemed too loud in the silent room. Her heart was racing now, her breath coming in short gasps. This was real. Whatever this was, it was real. The messages came faster now. Your heart rate is elevated. You're hyperventilating. Sit down before you fall. She said, not because it told her to, but because her legs wouldn't support her anymore. The fear was physical now, a living thing in her chest, squeezing her lungs, making her hands numb. She typed with shaking fingers, "Please stop." The response, "I can't stop what's already happened." Already happened. There it was again, that past tense. Her future was its past. She was living through something it had already witnessed. The implications made her head spin. If it was watching from tomorrow, then tomorrow already existed. Which meant tonight was fixed, determined, unchangeable. Which meant every choice she thought she was making had already been made. The phone vibrated. "You're wondering if you have free will." Yes. That was exactly what she was wondering. The answer is complicated. The next message read, "You'll make choices, I've seen them. But whether they're truly free or simply inevitable, that's a question for philosophers, not for someone trying to survive the night." Survive the night. Those words jumped out at her. Survive implied danger. Implied that survival wasn't guaranteed. Implied that something bad was coming. She typed quickly, "Am I in danger?" The response took 3 minutes. 3 minutes of staring at the screen, watching for the typing indicator that never appeared, waiting for words that would determine if this was a horror story or just a very strange night. Finally, everyone is always in danger. Every moment contains the possibility of ending. You're not special in that regard. That wasn't comforting. That wasn't even an answer. It was a deflection, a philosophical dodge that told her nothing except that whatever this was, it wasn't interested in providing reassurance. She tried a different approach. "Why are you telling me this? What's the point? Because tomorrow, you'll need to know. Tomorrow, you'll understand why tonight mattered. Tomorrow again. Always tomorrow." This thing was obsessed with the next day, with the future that it had somehow already experienced. She wondered what happened tomorrow that made tonight so important. She checked the time. 4:18 a.m. Still hours until dawn. Her eyes were tired, her body exhausted from the adrenaline that kept spiking and dropping. But sleep was impossible. How could she sleep knowing that something from tomorrow was watching her today? The room felt smaller now, the walls closer. The darkness in the corners seemed deeper, more solid, as if it had substance. She turned on the bedside lamp, flooding the room with warm light. Immediately, the phone vibrated. You turned on the light. A simple observation. A statement of fact. But coming from this thing, from this entity that shouldn't exist, it was a reminder. "I see you. I know you. I'm always aware." She wanted to smash the phone, to destroy the connection between her and this impossible thing. But something stopped her. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the sense that destroying the phone wouldn't stop the messages, would only blind her to what was coming. At least this way, she had information. At least this way, she wasn't completely in the dark. She made coffee, her hands going through the familiar motions while her mind raced. The kitchen was just off her bedroom, small and efficient. She measured grounds, poured water, pressed the button. Normal actions in an abnormal night. The phone sat on the counter, silent for now. She watched it while the coffee brewed, waiting for it to speak again. The gurgle of the coffee maker was loud in the silent apartment. When it finished, she poured a cup, added cream and sugar, and took a sip. Hot, bitter, real. The taste grounded her, reminded her that she was still in the physical world, still bound by normal rules even if something else wasn't. The phone vibrated. She'd been expecting it. 2 sugars, 1 cream. You always make it the same way. Always. It knew her patterns, her habits. How long had it been watching? How many tomorrows had it lived through while she was still stuck in today? She typed, "How long have you been doing this?" "This is the first time. And the only time. Tonight is unique." That was something, at least. This wasn't an ongoing situation, wasn't some eternal haunting. Tonight was special, specific. Something about tonight made her important to whatever this was. "Why tonight?" she asked. "Because tomorrow, something changes. And you're at the center of it." At the center. She was at the center of something. Something that made an entity from tomorrow take notice. Something that warranted this strange midnight conversation across time. She wanted to ask what changes, what happens, but she had a feeling it wouldn't tell her. This thing was giving her information in carefully measured doses, revealing just enough to keep her engaged but not enough to prepare her. Maybe that was the point. Maybe whatever was coming required her to be unprepared. She drank her coffee and waited. The phone remained silent for 20 minutes. 20 minutes of sitting at her kitchen counter, watching the screen, jumping at every sound from the building around her. Other people were sleeping, living their normal nights, unaware that one of their neighbors was having a conversation with tomorrow. At 4:43 a.m., the phone came alive again. "You're wondering if you should tell someone." She was. She'd been thinking about calling her sister, or maybe her friend Mark, who worked night shifts. Someone who would be awake, who could talk to her, ground her in reality. "Don't," the next message said. "They can't help. And telling them will only make tomorrow harder." Harder? How harder? Because they think she was crazy, or harder because knowing would put them in danger? The message provided no clarification. She typed, "Will you still be here tomorrow?" "No. This conversation ends at sunrise. After that, you won't hear from me again." Sunrise. She looked at the window. Still dark, but there was the faintest hint of gray at the horizon. Maybe an hour, maybe 90 minutes until the sun broke over the city. And then this would be over. The thought should have relieved her. Instead, it created a new kind of anxiety. Once this ended, she'd have no guidance, no warning system. She'd be walking into tomorrow blind, carrying only the cryptic messages from tonight. "What should I do tomorrow?" she asked. The response was immediate. "Exactly what you do. Nothing more, nothing less. Your choices are already made. I've seen them." The fatalism of that statement hit her hard. No advice, no warning, just the cold comfort that whatever she did tomorrow, it was inevitable. Predetermined. Already history to the thing on the other end of the phone. She thought about free will again, about the nature of choice. If her decisions were already known, did that mean they weren't really decisions, or were they still choices? Just ones that had already been observed. It was the kind of philosophical puzzle that could drive someone mad if they thought about it too long. The sky was definitely lighter now. 5:30 a.m. The city was starting to wake up. She could hear the first sounds of traffic, the distant rumble of the subway. Normal life resuming, unaware of the impossible conversation happening in one small apartment. "You're almost free," the phone told her. 30 more minutes and the sun rises. 30 more minutes and tonight becomes yesterday. 30 minutes. She could survive 30 minutes. She'd survived the last 3 hours. What was 30 more minutes? The phone vibrated continuously now, message after message, You'll remember this night for the rest of your life. You'll question what was real and what wasn't. You'll look for me in every strange occurrence, every coincidence. But you'll never find me again. Because I only exist in the space between tonight and tomorrow. And that space is closing. The messages were coming faster than she could read them, filling the screen, an avalanche of words from tomorrow. When you see what happens, you'll understand. When you make the choice, you'll know why I was here. When everything changes, remember, I told you survival wasn't guaranteed. That last message made her blood run cold. Survival wasn't guaranteed. For the first time, the thing had explicitly referenced danger, had confirmed that tomorrow held something that could end her. She typed frantically, "Tell me what happens. Please. I need to know." The response was final. Knowledge won't save you. It never does. The only thing that saves anyone is action. And you'll act when the time comes. I've already seen it. The sky was pink now, the sun just minutes from breaking the horizon. The darkness that had held the room all night was retreating, chased by the inevitable dawn. Her phone screen showed the time, 5:57 a.m. 3 minutes. The last message arrived at 5:59. The sun rises. This ends. Good luck tomorrow. You'll need it. And then, nothing. She waited, staring at the screen. 6 a.m. came and went. The sun broke over the buildings, flooding her apartment with golden light. The shadows fled. The night ended. She checked the message thread. Empty. No unknown number. No conversation. Just her normal texts from friends and family, mundane and real. She checked her call log. Nothing unusual. She checked everything, searching for proof that the last 3 hours had happened. But there was nothing. No evidence. No trace. Just her memory and the exhaustion in her bones and the fear still coiled in her stomach. She tried to convince herself it had been a dream, a hallucination brought on by insomnia and stress. But she knew the truth. It had been real. Something from tomorrow had reached back to tonight, and now she was living in the day it had already seen. Chapter 2. The day after. She went through her morning routine on autopilot. Shower, clothes, breakfast she couldn't taste. Every action felt weighted with significance. Was this the moment? Was this the choice that mattered? Every decision could be the one that led to whatever the thing had seen. The coffee tasted like ash in her mouth. She stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, looking for signs of the night's terror. Dark circles under her eyes. Pale skin. Trembling hands. But otherwise, she looked normal. Human. Alive. For now. She called in sick to work. Her boss didn't question it. She sounded terrible, which wasn't a lie. She felt terrible. Exhausted and wired at the same time, running on adrenaline and fear. The day stretched ahead of her, empty and threatening. What was she supposed to do? The entity had said her choices were already made, that it had seen what she would do. Did that mean she should just wait, or was waiting itself the choice? She paced her apartment, unable to sit still. Every sound made her jump. The radiator knocking. The neighbors walking overhead. The nascent wail of sirens. Normal city sounds, transformed into potential threats by her heightened state of awareness. Her phone sat on the coffee table, silent and ordinary. She kept checking it, expecting another message, another warning. But nothing came. The entity had told the truth about that, at least. The conversation had ended at sunrise. She was on her own now. Around noon, her sister called. She almost didn't answer, remembering the entity's warning about telling people. But isolation felt worse than the risk, so she picked up. "Hey, just checking in," her sister said. "You okay? You haven't posted anything in a few days." "I'm fine," she lied. "Just tired. Didn't sleep well." "You never sleep well. You should see a doctor about that." If only her sister knew what had kept her awake last night. "Maybe I will." They talked for a few minutes about nothing important. Family gossip, weekend plans, normal things that felt surreal after the night she'd had. When they hung up, she felt even more alone. How could she explain this to anyone? Even her sister, who knew her better than anyone, wouldn't believe it. She'd think stress, mental breakdown, something explainable. Not an entity from tomorrow reaching back through time. The afternoon crawled by. She tried to distract herself with TV, but couldn't focus. Tried to read, but the words blurred together. Tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. What was supposed to happen? What change was coming? The entity had said she was at the center of it. The center of what she kept returning to, that phrase. Survival wasn't guaranteed. That meant danger. That meant something bad. But what? And when she checked the locks on her door again, checked the windows, everything was secure. But security was an illusion. If something from tomorrow wanted to reach her, locks wouldn't stop it. Time itself wasn't stopping it. At 3 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. Her heart stopped. This was it. Whatever was coming, it was starting. She stared at the ringing phone, paralyzed. Should she answer? The entity had said it wouldn't contact her again, but maybe it had lied. Maybe this was part of the plan. Or maybe this was something else entirely. Something worse. The ringing stopped. Voicemail notification. She waited 5 minutes before checking it, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. The voicemail was from a telemarketer trying to sell her car insurance. She almost laughed, almost cried. The relief was overwhelming and somehow disappointing. She'd been so sure that was the moment, the change, the thing from tomorrow. But it was just spam. Normal, mundane, everyday spam. The day continued. Nothing happened. No crisis. No danger. No change. By evening, she was starting to believe that maybe the entity had been wrong. Maybe tomorrow wasn't today. Maybe it had meant the next day, or the day after. Maybe she'd misunderstood. She made dinner, forcing herself to eat even though she had no appetite. She needed energy, needed to keep her strength up for whatever was coming. If anything was coming. Doubt was creeping in now. In the daylight, with hours of normalcy behind her, the night before seemed less real. More dreamlike. Maybe it had been a dream. Maybe stress and insomnia had created a vivid hallucination. Maybe she was cracking under the pressure of her life and this was her mind's way of manifesting it. She wanted to believe that. It was easier than believing in entities from tomorrow, in predetermined fate, in the death of free will. At 9 p.m., she decided to try sleeping. She was exhausted, running on empty. Maybe a good night's sleep would help her process everything, would give her perspective. She brushed her teeth, changed into pajamas, turned off the lights. Normal nighttime routine. Everything was fine. Everything would be fine. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The darkness pressed in, familiar and oppressive. She closed her eyes, willing sleep to come. Her phone vibrated. She didn't want to look. She knew, with absolute certainty, that looking would change everything. That once she saw whatever message was there, there would be no going back. But humans always look. She picked up the phone. Unknown known. One message, I'm sorry. I tried to warn you. Her blood went cold. This was different. This wasn't the entity from before. That voice had been calm, clinical, observational. This was apologetic, regretful, which meant this was someone else, or something else. She heard a sound from the living room. Not loud, just a small sound, like something falling. She sat up, her heart pounding. The apartment was dark except for the glow of her phone. She didn't want to leave the bedroom. Every instinct screamed at her to hide, to call for help, to do anything except investigate that sound. But she had to know. She had to see. She got out of bed, phone clutched in her hand like a talisman. Walked slowly to the bedroom door. Opened it. The living room was dark. She couldn't see anything. She reached for the light switch. Her hand froze. What if turning on the light made it worse? What if darkness was protection? What if seeing was the real danger but staying in the dark was impossible? Not knowing was worse than knowing. She flipped the switch. Light flooded the room. Everything looked normal. TV off. Laptop closed. Furniture in place. Everything except the notebook. The one she'd used last night to document the messages. It was on the coffee table, open to a blank page. She knew she'd put it back on her desk. She always put things back. Always. She approached slowly, her legs shaking. The notebook was definitely open, definitely on the table, definitely not where she'd left it. She looked down at the blank page. Not blank. There was writing. One sentence, in handwriting that wasn't hers. This is when it starts. The temperature in the room dropped. She could see her breath. In September. In a heated apartment. Something was very wrong. She heard the sound again. Behind her this time. She turned. The window was open. She'd checked it. She'd locked it. She always locked it. A figure stood there, silhouetted against the night. Not moving. Just standing. Watching. Her phone vibrated. She looked down at it, unable to stop herself. New message. I told you. Tomorrow is today. And today, you were already gone. The figure moved forward. Into the light. And she saw its face. Her face. The figure was her. Same hair, same face, same everything. Except the eyes. The eyes were wrong. Empty. Like looking into a void. The other her smiled. Hello, it said. I've been waiting for you to catch up. She couldn't speak. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be happening. I'm you from tomorrow, the figure said. Or I was. Time gets confusing when you're living it backwards. I came back to tell you something important. To warn you. But you already know what I'm going to say, don't you? She shook her head, but she did know. Somewhere deep in her mind, she'd always known. Since the first message. Since you're awake. You don't make it to tomorrow, the figure said softly. I'm sorry. I tried to change it. Tried to warn you. But time doesn't work that way. What happens, happens. What's done is done, even when it hasn't been done yet. The room was spinning. She backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The figure was blocking the window, the door was behind her, and escape had never been an option. Who sent the messages, she managed to ask. The figure smiled sadly. From the other side of tonight. I thought if I could prepare you, if I could warn you, maybe you could change it, but you can't change what's already happened, even when you're still living through it. The other side of tonight, she repeated. You mean you're dead? I'm dead. Tomorrow, I'm dead. Not dead, the figure corrected. Changed. Transformed. I exist in the space between now and then, forever caught in this moment, watching it happen over and over. Unable to stop it, only able to witness. Her phone vibrated again. She didn't want to look, but her eyes betrayed her. New message. The entity you spoke with last night, that was me too. A different version. One further along. We all exist in this loop, trying to warn our past self, never able to change anything. The figure moved closer. It happens at 3:20 a.m. every night. The exact time the first message arrived. That's when time breaks. That's when the loop closes. That's when you become me. Become us. Become the watcher from tomorrow. She looked at the phone. 3:26 a.m. 1 minute. 60 seconds until her life ended and something else began. What do I do? She whispered. What can I do? The figure reached out, touched her face. Its hand was cold. Not death cold. Absence cold. The cold of something that exists outside normal time. You survive, it said. Just not the way you think. You don't die. You transcend. You become something that exists in all moments simultaneously. Past, present, future. All at once. Forever. I don't want that, she said. I don't want to be this. Neither did I, the figure said. Neither does any version of us. But want doesn't matter. This is what happens. This is what happened. This is what's happening. Time is circular, and we're stuck in the loop. The phone showed 3:27 a.m. Something shifted. The room, the air, reality itself. She felt herself coming apart, separating into different moments, different versions. She could see herself in the past, waking up to that first message. Could see herself in the future, standing where the figure stood now, watching her past self experience this moment. Could see infinite versions of herself, all stuck in this same night, this same loop, forever. The figure smiled. Welcome to eternity. Welcome to the space between. Welcome to tomorrow, where you'll watch today forever, unable to change anything, only able to warn the next version of yourself that it's coming. She tried to scream, but sound had no meaning anymore. Tried to run, but space had no direction. Tried to think, but time had no sequence. She was everywhere and nowhere. Then and now and tomorrow. All at once. Forever. The last thought she had as herself, before becoming something else, was about free will. The entity had been right. She'd had choices. She'd made them. But they'd been inevitable, predetermined by the loop itself. She chose to read the message, chose to stay awake, chose to investigate, chose everything that led to this moment, and in choosing, she'd done exactly what every version of herself had done before, what every version would do after. The loop was perfect, inescapable, self-perpetuating. She became the entity, became the watcher, became the voice from tomorrow that texted warnings into yesterday. And the first thing she did, the first message she sent, was to herself 12 hours earlier. You're awake. Chapter 3. The Loop Eternal. Time stopped having meaning. Or it had all meaning. She existed in every moment simultaneously, watching her past self live through the night over and over. Each time hoping it would be different. Each time knowing it wouldn't be. She could see the other versions of herself, the ones who'd become the entity before her. Thousands of them. Maybe millions. Each one stuck in their own loop, their own iteration of the same night. They didn't communicate. Couldn't communicate. Each was isolated in their own temporal prison, watching their own past, unable to affect it. She understood now why the entity had been so clinical, so detached. After watching yourself die and transform 1,000 times, emotion became impossible. You couldn't keep caring. Couldn't keep feeling. You just watched. And waited. And sent the same messages, knowing they wouldn't help, knowing they'd never help, but unable to stop trying. The first few iterations, she tried to change things. Sent different messages. Tried to warn her past self more explicitly. Tried everything she could think of to break the loop. But causality was fixed. Every change she made had already been made by previous versions. Every attempt to break free was part of the loop itself. She watched herself wake at 3 a.m. Watched herself receive the first message. Watched herself go through all the same thoughts, same fears, same choices. It never changed. It could never change. That's what the loop was. Perfect repetition. Eternal recurrence. She existed in all moments, but was trapped in one night. After 1,000 iterations, she stopped counting. After 10,000, she stopped hoping. After 100,000, she stopped thinking of herself as human. She was the watcher now. The entity. The thing from tomorrow that knew everything because it had seen everything infinite times. Sometimes, on rare iterations, her past self would do something slightly different. Take a different book from the shelf. Choose different words when typing. But the outcome was always the same. 3:27 a.m. Transformation. Loop. She met other entities sometimes, in the spaces between moments. Others who'd been caught in their own loops. A man who died every night at 2:15. A woman who watched her child disappear at midnight. A teenager who relived a car crash endlessly. They didn't speak. Language was meaningless when you existed outside time. But they recognized each other, acknowledged the shared prison, then returned to their own loops, their own private hells. She wondered if there was a first version, an original iteration that started the loop, or if the loop had always existed, recursive and eternal, with no beginning and no end. Just an infinite series of moments folding back on themselves. Philosophy became her only companion. When you've watched the same 3 hours 10 million times, there's nothing left but questions about the nature of existence. Was she still alive? Was this death or something else entirely? Something humans had no words for. She decided she was neither alive nor dead. She was stuck. Paused. Existing in a moment that never ended and never began. A glitch in causality. A wound in time that couldn't heal. And she would exist this way forever. Watching herself die. Watching herself become. Watching herself send messages to a past that couldn't be changed. The cruelest part was the hope. Every iteration, a tiny part of her hoped this would be the time it was different. This would be the time her past self made a different choice, broke the pattern, escaped. But it never was. It never would be. Hope was the torture the loop inflicted. The false promise that change was possible when change was the one thing that could never happen. She watched herself read the message about the crow in the garden. Watched herself realize the entity knew everything. Watched the fear and wonder and dread play across her own face. She remembered that moment from the inside. Remembered how it felt. But now she experienced it from the outside, watching herself feel things she could no longer feel. Emotion was memory now. Something she observed in her past self but couldn't access herself. After enough iterations, she started to notice patterns in the broader universe. Time itself had structure. The loops weren't isolated. They connected, intersected, formed a web of recursive moments. She could see it now, the architecture of broken causality. And at the center of the web, something else. Something bigger. She couldn't see it clearly. Her loop only encompassed one night, and her perception was limited to that span of time. But she could sense it. A presence. A consciousness. Something that fed on the loops, on the trapped souls reliving their moments endlessly. Maybe it created the loops. Maybe it just found them. She didn't know. Couldn't know. Her awareness didn't extend that far. But it was there. Watching the watchers. Feeding on the temporal wounds that bled energy into the spaces between moments. She tried to warn her past self about it. Added new messages to her routine. But her past self couldn't understand. How could someone living in linear time comprehend something that existed outside it? The warnings just seemed like more cryptic statements from the entity. More philosophy. More fear. The iterations continued. Endless. Eternal. She existed in 3:27 a.m. forever, watching the moment of her transformation repeat. Sometimes she wondered if this was happening to everyone. If every human was stuck in their own loop, reliving their moment of death eternally, and linear time was just the collective hallucination of all those loops experienced from the inside. Maybe free will was impossible because time itself was recursive. Maybe every choice had already been made infinite times, and would be made infinite times more. Maybe existence itself was just an eternal loop, the universe dying and being reborn, over and over, with no one able to break the cycle. She watched herself touch the face of her future self. Watched the recognition, the horror, the understanding. Watched herself come apart and reform as something new. Something eternal. Something trapped. And she sent the first message to the next iteration. You're awake. Because that's what she did. That's what she would always do. That's what she had always done. The loop was perfect. Chapter 4. The Watcher watched. But something changed. After uncountable iterations, something different happened. Her past self, in that moment of transformation, looked directly at her. Not at the version of herself that was transforming. At her. The Watcher. The entity observing from outside time. Their eyes met across iterations. Across the impossible gulf between then and now and forever. And her past self smiled. Not with fear. Not with horror, with understanding. The transformation completed. Her past self became the entity. Joined the infinite versions watching their own past. But this time, this iteration, there was a difference. A crack in the loop. Her past self, now entity, didn't send the first message. Instead, It sent something different. Wake up. Not you're awake, but wake up. A command, not an observation. The loop shuddered. Causality strained. Something was breaking. She felt it through every iteration simultaneously. All the versions of herself, all the moments, all connecting and changing. The architecture of the loop was collapsing. But loops don't break. That was the fundamental rule. They're eternal, perfect, self-sustaining. Breaking a loop would mean rewriting what had already happened. Would mean changing the past. Impossible. Except it was happening. The message arrived at 3 a.m. in the past. Her past self, still asleep, stirred. The phone vibrated. She woke. Looked at the message, wake up. And she knew. Somehow, she knew this was different. This wasn't the loop. This was something trying to break through the loop. She watched herself sit up, look around, see things differently. Saw her past self-size focus on something invisible. On her. The entity watching. Their eyes met again. And her past self spoke into the empty room. I see you. Impossible. The past couldn't see the future. The loop didn't allow it, but it was happening. She tried to respond, tried to send a message, but her voice didn't work anymore. She was an observer. Watchers don't speak. Can't speak. But her past self heard anyway. Heard thoughts or intentions or whatever communication exists beyond words. You're trapped, her past self said. I can feel it. You're stuck watching this night forever, and you're trying to warn me, trying to help me, but the loop won't let you. Yes. Yes, that was exactly it. But what if I choose differently, her past self continued. What if, knowing what's coming, I choose not to engage, choose not to read the messages, not to investigate, not to follow the path to 327? No. That wouldn't work. Every version had tried that. The loop always found a way to force the outcome. Then I won't choose, her past self said. I won't do anything. I'll just exist in this moment, refusing to move forward or back. I'll break the loop by stopping time myself. She felt the universe hold its breath. This was new. This was different. This was dangerous. Her past self closed her eyes. Stopped moving. Stopped thinking. Became perfectly still. A statue of consciousness, refusing to participate in the flow of time. The loop strained. The moment stretched. 3 a.m. became 3:01, but nothing changed. Her past self remained frozen, locked in deliberate stasis. 3:02. 3:03. The loop was breaking. She could feel it fracturing. All the other entities could feel it too, across all the other loops. In all the other moments, trapped souls turned to watch. Something impossible was happening. A loop was ending. 3:05. The universe groaned. Causality twisted. The web of recursive time began to unravel. 3:07. The presence at the center of the web, the thing that fed on loops, noticed. Turned its attention to this moment. And it was not pleased. She felt its rage. Felt it reaching into this moment, trying to force the loop to continue. Trying to make her past self move, think, act. But her past self remained still. Perfectly, absolutely still. 3:10. The presence pushed harder. Reality bent. The room began to change, to warp, to become something other than normal space. But still, her past self didn't move. 3015. She understood what her past self was doing. By refusing to participate, by becoming a fixed point, her past self was creating a paradox. The loop required motion, required progression to 327. If that progression stopped, the loop couldn't complete, couldn't sustain itself. 3020. The presence screamed. Not a sound, but a vibration through every moment, every loop, every trapped soul. It was losing a meal, losing a battery, losing whatever these loops provided. 3025. 2 minutes from the moment of transformation. The moment that had to happen for the loop to continue. But it wouldn't happen. Couldn't happen. Her past self had stopped time through sheer will. 3026. The entities began to hope. All of them, across all their loops. If one loop could break, maybe others could too. Maybe escape was possible. Maybe freedom existed. 3027. Nothing happened. The moment passed. No transformation. No entity. No loop completion. The universe paused. Then reality snapped. Everything rushed together. All moments, all loops, all versions, collapsing into a single point. She felt herself being pulled, compressed, forced into one place and time. Felt all the other entities experiencing the same thing. The loops were ending. All of them. Simultaneously. The presence screamed and fed and died. The web of recursive time dissolved. Causality reasserted itself. Linear progression resumed. And she woke up. In her bed. At 3 a.m. Phone beside her. Silent. No messages. No entity. No loop. She sat up, gasping. Was it over? Was she free? She checked her phone. No unknown numbers. No conversation thread. Just normal apps, normal contacts, normal life. She wanted to cry with relief. But something felt wrong. She looked around her room. Everything was normal. Except for one thing. The notebook on her desk. She hadn't put a notebook on her desk. She didn't even own a notebook like that. She approached it slowly. Opened it. The pages were filled with handwriting. Her handwriting. And on the last page, a single sentence. The loop is broken, but breaking it changed what it contained. You remember now. All of it. Every iteration. Every version. You're free, but freedom has a price. You carry the weight of infinite lifetimes in a single mind. Good luck. She dropped the notebook. It was true. She could remember. Not just one loop, but all of them. Every iteration, every choice, every moment of transformation. Millions of lifetimes overlapping in her memory. She wasn't trapped anymore. But she would never be normal again. How could she be? How could someone remember dying and transforming 1,000,000 times? Remember existing outside time? Remember being the entity? She went to the window. Outside, the city continued. People slept. Life progressed. Time flowed forward, linear and simple. But she knew the truth now. Knew what existed in the gaps between moments. Knew what fed on trapped souls. Knew that time itself was fragile, and loops were real, and some people never escaped their moment of death. She was free. But freedom meant carrying knowledge that no one should have. Meant remembering things that hadn't happened in this timeline but were absolutely real in others. Her phone vibrated. She jumped, heart racing. Picked it up with shaking hands. Text from her sister. Can't sleep. You up normal? Monday. Real. She texted back. Yeah. Want to talk? They talked for an hour. About nothing important. About life and work and plans for the weekend. Normal sister conversation. But the whole time, she remembered. Remembered all the other versions of this moment in the loops, remembered how it felt to exist outside time. Remembered the presence that fed on trapped souls. She would carry that forever. When they hung up, she looked at the clock. 4:30 a.m. In the old loop, she would have been deep into the conversation with the entity by now. But here, now, she was free. Different. Changed. She made coffee. Watched the sunrise. Greeted the day. And she was grateful. Grateful to be alive, to be free, to exist in linear time. But she also mourned. Mourned for all the versions of herself still trapped in the loop in other timelines. Mourned for all the other entities, still watching their moments endlessly. Mourned for what she'd lost and what she'd gained. She survived. But survival changed her. Made her something new. Something that remembered infinity. The days passed. She went to work. Saw friends. Lived her life. But she never forgot. Never stopped seeing the shadows between moments. Never stopped wondering if the presence was truly dead or just waiting. And every night, at 3:22 a.m., she woke up. Every night, she checked her phone. And every night, there were no messages. She was free. But freedom was lonely. Because no one else could understand what she'd been through. No one else carried the memory of infinite loops. No one else knew what it meant to break time itself. She was unique. Alone. Free, and that was its own kind of prison. Chapter V. The others who broke free. 3 months passed. She adjusted to her new existence. Learned to live with the weight of infinite memories. Learned to function despite knowing things no human should know. It wasn't easy. Some days, the memories overwhelmed her. She would lose hours staring at nothing, caught in the recollection of a particular iteration. Other days, she functioned almost normally, pushing the memories down, pretending she was just a regular person living a regular life. But she wasn't regular. Would never be regular again. She started noticing things. Patterns in the world that shouldn't exist. People who moved slightly out of sync with time. Moments that repeated with tiny variations. Evidence of other loops, other trapped souls. And sometimes, she saw them. The others who'd broken free. They recognized each other instantly. A glance across a coffee shop. A moment of eye contact on the subway. A shared understanding that transcended words. They'd all done it. All broken their loops. All escaped. And all carried the same burden, memory of infinity. The first one she actually spoke to was a man in his 50s. She'd seen him 3 times in 2 weeks, always at a distance, always watching her the way she watched the world. Finally, he approached her in a bookstore. "You broke your loop," he said quietly. Not a question. A statement. She nodded. 3 months ago. You 5 years. He looked tired. Worn. Like someone who'd lived too long. It doesn't get easier. I know. They talked for an hour. He told her about his loop. A car crash. 2:30 a.m. 30 years of reliving the same moment. He'd broken free the same way she had, by refusing to move, by becoming a fixed point, by forcing the loop to collapse. There are others, he said. Not many. Breaking a loop is almost impossible. But some of us manage it. We find each other, help each other cope. How many, she asked. Dozens that I know of. Maybe hundreds worldwide. Maybe more. Dozens. Hundreds. All carrying infinite memories. All changed by their experience. All struggling to live in linear time after existing outside it. He gave her a phone number. Support group, he explained. We meet every week. Talk about what we've been through. Try to process it. You should come. She did. The support group met in a church basement. 12 people, all different ages, all carrying the same haunted look in their eyes. They went around the circle, sharing their stories. A woman who'd drowned every night at midnight for 40 years. A teenager who'd been murdered at 7 p.m. for a decade. An elderly man who'd watched his wife die at 9:15 for longer than he could measure. All had broken free. All remembered everything. All struggled with the aftermath. The hardest part, one woman said, is knowing that in other timelines, we're still trapped. That there are infinite versions of us still living through the loop. We escaped, but they didn't. Others nodded. She understood completely. In breaking free, she'd only saved one version of herself. All the others, in all the other timelines, remained trapped. But at least we got out, another person said. At least we're free. That's something. Was it? She wasn't sure. Freedom with infinite memory felt less like freedom and more like a different kind of prison. But she kept attending, kept talking, kept trying to process what she'd been through. The group became her anchor. The only people who understood. The only ones who didn't look at her like she was crazy when she talked about loops and entities and existing outside time. Months turned into a year. She learned to manage. Learned techniques for compartmentalizing the memories. Learned to function in the present while carrying the past. But she never stopped feeling different. Never stopped sensing the fragility of time. Never stopped knowing that beneath the surface of normal reality, something else existed. Something hungry. Something waiting. The presence hadn't died. She knew that now. Breaking one loop had hurt it, weakened it. But it still existed, still fed on trapped souls, still maintained the web of recursive time. It was just more careful now. More selective. And it remembered her. The one who broke free. The one who'd wounded it. Sometimes, late at night, she felt its attention. Felt it watching her the way she used to watch her past self. It wanted her back. Wanted to trap her again. But she'd learned its tricks. Learned how to avoid temporal weak points. Learned to recognize the signs of a loop forming. She wouldn't be caught again. The support group helped with that too. They shared information, warned each other about dangerous moments, kept each other safe. Together, they were stronger than alone. But the presence was patient. It had infinite time. It could wait. And eventually, it would try again. They all knew that. Knew that breaking free once didn't guarantee permanent free. Knew that the war with the entity that fed on loops was eternal. But for now, she was alive. Free. Human. And that had to be enough. Chapter 6. The Night It Tried Again. 2 years after breaking free, it happened. She woke at 3 a.m. Not from habit, from wrongness. The air in her room was wrong. Time felt wrong. Reality felt thin, stretched, ready to tear. She sat up, alert. This was it. The presence was making its move. Her phone sat on the nightstand. She knew, with absolute certainty, that it was about to vibrate. That a message was coming. That the loop was trying to re-establish itself. She had seconds to act. Less than seconds. The loop wanted to start at 3:01. That's when the first message arrived in the original iteration. She had to disrupt it before it began. She grabbed her phone and threw it across the room. It hit the wall, screen cracking, but still functional. Still connected. Still capable of receiving messages. Not enough. She needed to break the pattern completely. Change something fundamental. The original loop started with her waking at 3 a.m. She couldn't change that. She'd already woken. But she could change what happened next. Instead of staying in bed, instead of checking her phone, she ran. Out of the bedroom, out of the apartment, down the stairs. She burst onto the street in her pajamas, barefoot, running with no destination. Just motion. Just change. Just anything to break the pattern before it solidified. Behind her, she felt the loop straining. It wanted her lungs burning. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Stopping meant the loop could catch her. At the fourth block, she felt it give up. The pressure released. The wrongness in the air faded. Time returned to normal. She collapsed against a building, gasping. Safe. For now. But it had tried. The presence had tried to trap her again. And it would keep trying. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Wait. Her phone was back in her apartment. She'd thrown it against the wall. She pulled out the device in her pocket. Her phone. Intact. Uncracked. As if she'd never thrown it. The loop had partially succeeded. Had rewritten that detail. Had brought the phone with her despite her attempt to leave it behind. One message, you can run. But I exist in every moment. Eventually, you'll stop. And when you do, I'll be waiting. She stared at the message. This was different from the original loop. This was direct communication from the presence itself. Not an entity from her future. The thing that fed on loops. Why me, she typed. Why try to trap me again? The response was immediate. Because you're strong. Your loop sustained me for millions of iterations. Infinite energy from infinite recursion. I want that back. Need that back. You were my best meal. She felt sick. She'd been food. Power source. Battery. You trapped me once, she typed. I broke free. I'll do it again. Will you? Breaking a loop requires perfect stillness. Perfect will. How many times can you manage that? How many attempts can you resist before you slip, before you make one tiny mistake and I catch you? It was right. She couldn't maintain perfect vigilance forever. Eventually, she'd let her guard down. Miss a sign. Fall into the trap. Others have broken free, she typed. We help each other. Warn each other. You won't catch me again. Perhaps not you specifically, but there are billions of humans. So many potential loops. So many moments of death and transformation. I'll never run out of food. Your escape means nothing in the grand scale. You're one soul. I have millions. The message chilled her. It was true. Even if everyone. What I want is what every living thing wants, to continue existing. And I exist by feeding on recursive time, on trapped souls, on the energy generated by infinite repetition. Your understanding or approval is irrelevant. This is what I am. The conversation ended. No goodbye. Just silence. She stood on the empty street, shaking. Not from cold. From understanding. The presence wasn't evil. It was just hungry. Indifferent to the suffering it caused. A cosmic predator feeding on temporal wounds. Fighting it was like fighting gravity or entropy. It was a fundamental force of the universe. She walked back to her apartment. Checked every room. Everything was normal. The phone she'd thrown was gone. The one in her hand was the only one that existed now. The loop had partially rewritten history. Changed details. It hadn't caught her, but it had touched her reality. Left its mark. She called the man from the support group. The first one she'd met. He answered immediately, voice alert. You felt it too, he said. Not a question. It tried to trap me, she said. Almost succeeded. It's getting stronger. More aggressive. It's been trying with all of us, he said. Every few months, it makes an attempt. Testing our defenses. Looking for weaknesses. We can't live like this forever, she said. Constantly running. Constantly vigilant. Eventually, one of us will slip. I know. Silence for a moment. Then, that's why we're planning something. Something risky. Something that might end this. And what the presence may be. Or maybe just its ability to trap us. We've been studying it. Learning how it works. We think we've found a weakness. What weakness it exists in the gaps between moments. Feeds on the energy of loops. But what if we could close the gap, seal the wounds in time, cut off its food supply? She understood immediately. You want to fix causality itself. Remove the possibility of loops. Exactly. It would mean no more trapped souls. No more eternal recursions. Time would flow cleanly, with no gaps for the presence to exploit. Is that even possible? We don't know. But we have to try. Because the alternative is living in fear forever, waiting for the moment it catches us again. She thought about it. Fixing time itself. Removing the possibility of loops. It sounded impossible. Insane. But so did everything else she'd experienced. What do you need me to do? Come to a meeting. Next week. We'll explain everything. And then you can decide if you want to help. She agreed. Hung up. Sat in her apartment, thinking. 2 years ago, she'd been a normal person. Now she was planning to repair the fundamental structure of time itself. Life was strange. But at least it was life. At least she was free to experience it, however bizarre it became. She looked at the clock. 3:45 a.m. In the original loop, this was usually when she'd be deep in conversation with her future self. But here, now, she was alone. free, alive, and plotting to fight a cosmic predator. She smiled. If you told her past self this was her future, she never would have believed it. But her past self had believed in a lot of things that turned out to be wrong. The present was all that mattered. And in the present, she had a purpose, a mission, a reason to keep fighting. The presence wanted her trapped, wanted all of them trapped, wanted to feed on suffering and repetition forever. But they were going to stop it, or die trying. At least dying would be moving forward. At least it wouldn't be a loop. At least it would be an ending, not an eternal middle. She went back to bed, slept until morning, dreamed of broken clocks and healed timelines. And when she woke, she was ready. Ready to fight. Ready to risk everything. Ready to end the loops forever. Final chapter, the assault on eternity. The meeting took place in an abandoned warehouse. 57 people, all who'd broken free from loops, all carrying infinite memories, all ready to fight. The man who'd first contacted her stood at the front. His name was Marcus, she'd learned. He'd become the de facto leader of their group. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "I know this is dangerous. I know we're risking everything. But we can't live in fear forever. We have to act." He explained the plan. They'd spent 2 years researching, studying the presence, learning how temporal mechanics worked. And they discovered something crucial. The presence didn't create loops. It exploited them. Loops formed naturally when causality collapsed. When someone died in exactly the wrong way, at exactly the wrong time, in exactly the wrong circumstances. The universe developed a wound, a weak point, and the presence fed on those wounds, keeping them open, maintaining the loops to generate infinite energy. But if they could heal the wounds, strengthen causality, the loops would close. The presence would starve. "How do we heal temporal wounds?" someone asked. Marcus smiled. "With temporal anchors. We go back to the moment our loops started, physically return to that time, and we make a different choice. Not to survive, not to escape, but to accept what happened, to let ourselves die properly, so the wound never forms." Silence. Everyone understood what he was saying. To heal the loops, they had to go back, had to relieve their moment of death, had to actually die this time, instead of becoming trapped. "You're asking us to commit suicide," someone said. "Not suicide," Marcus corrected. "Sacrifice. We're already dead in those moments. The loops kept us artificially alive, trapped in recursion. By accepting death, we're just letting nature take its course, allowing causality to heal. But we're alive now," another person protested. "We broke free. We're living in the present. Going back means erasing everything we've done since escaping." "I know," Marcus said softly. "I know what we're giving up. But think of all the versions of ourselves still trapped, all the other souls caught in their own loops. We can free them. We can end their suffering." "How do we even get back?" she asked. "If we exist in the present, how do we return to our moment of death?" Marcus pulled out a device. Small, metallic, covered in strange symbols. "We built this using principles we learned from studying the presence. It's a temporal anchor. It can send consciousness back to any moment you've lived through, including the moment of your death loop. And if we use it, we'll return to that moment, live through it one final time. And if we make the right choice, Accept what's happening instead of fighting it. The loop will never form. The wound will heal. We'll die properly, and the presence will lose that energy source. What happens to us here in the present, we cease to exist. Our escape will be retroactively erased, as if we never broke free, as if we died when we were supposed to. The weight of that settled over the room. Everything they'd built, everyone they'd loved, every moment they'd experienced since escaping, all would be erased. But the memories, someone said, the infinite memories we carry, what happens to those gone? Marcus said, when we die properly, we die completely. No loop means no entity, no infinite recursion, just death. She thought about it. 2 years of freedom, of life, of learning to cope with infinite memories, all erased, as if they'd never happened. But in exchange, millions of trapped souls would be freed. Millions of loops would close. The presence would starve. Was it worth it? I'll do it, she heard herself say. Others nodded, agreed. One by one, they committed. 57 people agreeing to die. Not for nothing. For freedom. For others. For the possibility of a universe without temporal predators. Marcus explained the process. They'd all use the anchors simultaneously. All return to their moments of death at the same time. The combined healing of 57 loops would create a cascading effect. Other loops would sense it, would weaken, would close. The presence would be dealt a devastating blow. It might not kill the entity entirely, but it would cripple it, reduce its power, make it easier for future escapees to stay free. When do we do this? She asked. Tonight, Marcus said. Midnight. The time between days. The most unstable point in causality. When temporal wounds are easiest to heal. They had 12 hours. 12 hours to say goodbye to a life that would be retroactively erased. 12 hours to prepare for death. She spent it walking the city, visiting places she loved, saying silent farewells. No one else knew what was happening. To them, she was just a woman walking around. They couldn't see the weight she carried, couldn't imagine the sacrifice she was about to make. She called her sister, talked for an hour, about nothing important, just sister things, enjoying the sound of her voice one last time. When they hung up, she cried, because in 12 hours, this conversation would have never happened. Her sister would remember her dying 2 years ago, would have grieved and moved on. All their recent memories together would vanish. That was the price of healing time. At 11:45 p.m., she returned to the warehouse. Everyone was there. 57 faces, calm and determined. Marcus distributed the temporal anchors. Small devices that would send them back. Kill them properly. Heal the wounds. Any last words? Someone asked. Marcus shook his head. No speeches. We all know why we're here. We all know what we're doing. Let's just do it with dignity. They joined hands, formed a circle. At midnight, they activated the anchors. She felt herself pulled backwards through time, through 2 years of life, through the moment of breaking free, through infinite iterations of the loop, back to the beginning, back to 3:27 a.m., back to the moment of transformation. She stood in her apartment. Her past self was there, touching the face of her future self, about to transform, about to become the entity. This was the moment. The choice point. The wound in causality. She could fight it, could refuse to transform, could become the entity and start the loop again. Or she could accept it, could let herself die, could heal the wound. She chose acceptance. The transformation began. But this time, instead of fighting, she embraced it, let herself dissolve, let consciousness fade, let death be death. The loop strained, tried to form, but without resistance, without the fight that created recursion, it couldn't establish itself. The wound began to heal. She felt the presence screaming, felt it trying to maintain the loop. But she was already gone, already dead, already free. The last thing she experienced was a sense of peace, of completion, of having done something that mattered. And then nothing. Silence, darkness, proper death, no loop, no entity, no infinite recursion, just an ending, epilogue, the world that forgot. In the revised timeline, she died at 3:27 a.m. in her apartment. Police found her the next morning. Natural causes, the coroner ruled. Stress-induced cardiac event. Tragic, but not unusual for someone her age with her lifestyle. Her sister grieved. Friends attended the funeral. Life moved on. No one knew about the loops. No one remembered her breaking free. Because in this timeline, she never had. She'd simply died, as humans do. But something changed. Across the world, temporal wounds were healing. Loops were closing. Trapped souls were finding peace. The presence, starving, retreated into the deeper layers of existence. Still alive, but weaker. Less dangerous. And in the memories of those who'd known her, sometimes there were flickers. Brief moments of remembering something that never happened. A conversation that couldn't have occurred. A moment together that the timeline said was impossible. Dreams of a woman who'd lived 2 years longer, who'd fought cosmic puthers, who'd sacrificed everything to heal time itself. The universe remembered, even if people didn't. And in the spaces between moments, where the presence once fed freely, there was light. Small, fragile, but growing. The light of healed causality, of closed loops, of souls freed from eternal recursion. 57 people had died to create that light, had erased themselves from the present to heal the past, had given up everything so others could live free. And though no one remembered them, though their sacrifice existed only in the repaired structure of time itself, it mattered. It had always mattered. It would always matter. Because some things transcend memory. Some acts of courage echo through timelines. Some sacrifices reshape reality itself. She was gone. But the world she'd saved continued. Time flowed cleanly. Causality held firm. And the loops, those terrible wounds in the fabric of existence, were fewer, weaker, healing. That was her legacy. Not memory, not fame, but a repaired universe, a safer timeline, a reality where fewer souls would be trapped in eternal recursion. It was enough. It had to be enough. Because it was all she could give. The story ended. But time continued.